councillor for Bay Ward. And we've been dealing with traffic calming in other communities as well. And we're also dealing with what's called creating gateway communities. And that's where we make the entire neighborhood one speed. And then it's signed as you come into the neighborhood. And it gives you a feeling that, you know, once you're here, that's it, that's the speed. Now, there's a lot of interest in the speed. Now, the standard is 40 kilometers. I know that there is interest in doing 30K as well. And I'm going to have our experts from the city talk about that. But you'll hear more from them in a minute. Just see how we're doing for numbers. Do we know how many we're expecting, Connie? Just want to make sure. Are we waiting for anyone in particular? Just want to, but I think we can get going at 6:33.
Yeah, I think that's most everybody.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll get started. And I'm going to introduce our two city staff as well. You know, Connie's here. Connie's here from my office and keeps me on the straight and narrow on technology. She's a whiz on that. And so she can do the yeah. Oh, we're all getting there. We're all getting used to it. But we'll hand it over to Sean McGuire and Asmat Perveen, who are in our traffic services, and they work on specifically, Asmat specifically works on traffic calming. She's the one who did the work on Knightsbridge, which I think was very successful. So she can talk about that. And Sean McGuire does general traffic calming in neighborhoods. Hi, Sean.
And nice I will be sharing some screens, starting with the current traffic calming measures that are currently installed in Carlingwood.
Yeah, so we'll start where we are. So and explain how these things work in terms of studies, etc. Okay, I'll hand it over to Sean and Asmat now. Sean?
Yeah, hi everyone. So in terms, you just want me to speak about, I guess I can, well, Asmat, maybe you'd be better to speak about the TTC that's already in place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we can go from there.
Yeah.
This map shows the TTC measures that are in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, I speak. Okay, so a couple of things like the TTC measures are installed on this pocket. So a couple of pavement marking with bulb out, the slow down first signs, these yellow diamond shape one, and these black dots these are the speed boards. Okay, and there is also a one speed board on the share bond as well. This one, so if you see that this one is showing that markings are there with the bulb out. Yeah, and there is also another this magenta color, the diamond shape is representing the community sign. So there are a couple of the TTC measures already in place, and we are working on some streets currently, which are under review right now.
And by the way, this is Geo Ottawa, which is accessible to everybody. So you can use Geo Ottawa and go through and choose traffic calming measures, and it'll show you the ones that are in place already. Sorry, Asmat, sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Okay.
So I don't know, Asmat, if just to make some of the folks here more aware, do we have some pictures of some of the
that presentation will come up after, I think, what we decided in the later on in the presentation. First we will be discussing the gateway and the speeding other issues.
Yeah, right. So some of the features that were shown there just as symbols, we'll show you some pictures of those later just to help you better understand.
Okay.
And then there's, aside from the ones that are there, like as Matt said, there's other measures that we can consider for different streets.
Mhm.
Right.
So, do you want to talk about the Gateway community, Sean? And how it works?
Yeah, so if Connie, maybe if you can pull up the gateway map that shows the pockets, then I can talk about it with that up. It's a little easier. What we've done is we've created different pockets based on boundaries, and that the boundaries are either collector roadways or arterial roadways. So Woodruff is an arterial road. Seville, Sherbourne, those are collector roadways. So if they're not, and typically the gateways are 40 km/h gateway areas. So if the roadway itself, if the collector roadway itself is not already posted 40 or less, it becomes a boundary. Unless, and the way we can change that is if operating speeds are actually around the 40 mark, then we can actually have the speed limit lowered on those collector roadways and include it in the pocket. But in most cases, if it's unposted 50 or posted 50, operating speeds are generally around that 50 or even higher. So then it's more difficult. Because we base speed limits, or we try to base them on the operating speeds that currently exist. So, and for different reasons, it's there's been studies done in the past that prove that like artificially lowering the speed limit of a roadway, it can sometimes create other safety concerns. It creates a higher differential in speed, so it's harder to judge gaps for both drivers and active road users. So that's one of the major concerns with it. So in this case here, that the pockets we've established are shown in these two pink areas here. So Seville cuts through the middle. So at each sort of point is where there would be an entry point into that pocket. And at each of those points, there would be an entry sign, like that you're entering the 40 km gateway zone, and another sign as you exit it. So there'd be two signs at each of those points, which are entry points. You can see, like, there's well, currently there's the one in Wood Park, right? That's already established, which is just across Woodruff. And there's various gateway pockets like this throughout the city. So we remove all of the current speed limit signage within the area.
So that means one speed through a neighborhood. There's a comment here about one street being 30 because it leads to a school zone, Knightsbridge. That's, or asking if, shouldn't it be? I can tell you, Jason, he's asking to make it one street, Knightsbridge, 30. The whole point of the gateway is that all the streets are the same speed. If you keep changing it, they're going to, it's one street being 30 and 40. The whole point of the gateway is to make it all even and make it the same speed. So there's a question here about Sherbourne, should it be included in the gateway at 40K?
So again, Sherbourne is a collector roadway. We would have to establish like we'd have to determine, and we already have, I think, speed data there, as shown, 53, 56, 52. These are based on current speed data that we have. So it operates around the 50 mark. So the most appropriate speed limit to have there is 50 currently. That's not to say that it has to stay 50. The best way, if you want to lower speed limit on a roadway, the best way is to implement different measures to try and have operating speeds more like closer to the speed limit that we want, and then change the speed limit. So if we could get it down, you know, under 50, like maybe 47, 45, something like that, it makes it a better case for being able to lower it to 40.
Yeah, I would be in favor of that.
Yeah, now I just want to backtrack a bit. The main objective of gateway speed limit signage is to remove signage across the city. So like to have less signage out there. It's less cost for maintenance. It's less sign pollution. It's not expected that you know, that would necessarily change operating speeds. In some locations it might, if most of the streets in an area are 50 or unsigned 50, and we make that area 40, we may see lower speeds depending. It's not that black and white. Typically you have to add some different measures in order to get people to drive slower. Just lowering the speed doesn't typically work in most cases. It's lowering the speed limit. So, and then as for 30-kilometer roadways, there's a lot of criteria that has to be met in order to make it suitable for 30-kilometer speed limit. We can go over that later, I think.
Yeah, it's being pointed out that because there's 30 on the other side of Sherbourne. For example, Keenan, which is the street that is that runs into Knightsbridge, is 30, and then you have on the other side you have Knightsbridge.
Right. So as you pointed out, Councillor, we base it on the entire pocket, and the majority of the streets. So that was recently changed to 30 in that entire area east of Sherbourne, but that's based on you know, the majority of the streets in there being narrower and operating at lower speeds, I believe. It's a little different. We can't just pick out one street. You know, one street might be similar to most of those streets, but I think for the most part, we checked, and a lot of the streets west of Sherbourne are quite a bit wider, which makes it difficult to achieve the lower speeds.
Yeah. It was pointed out that Sherbourne is twisty. So that might be a reason to make it 40.
Hi, yeah. Councillor, is there an opportunity for us to ask questions other than in chat?
When we get towards the end, we're using the chat right now. And then if the questions don't get answered, we'll open it up. Okay, Stephanie?
I find it really difficult to type on my phone and then listen and read the conversation, the whole thing. But I have some questions just about exactly what he's talking about with the speed limit, because I'm not sure I understand. So if I'm sorry to interrupt, but the timing for my question is most appropriate right now, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand, because what I'm hearing is that the speed limits that we see here, they're the ones that are done by radar or however you collect that data, shows that if it's 50 kilometers an hour that we're seeing, then 50 kilometers an hour would be the right speed limit. And if we lowered it to 40 or artificially, that wouldn't actually achieve what it is we're trying to do. Is that what I'm Is that what I'm hearing? Because I guess I'm not sure that I followed the logic then.
Yeah, that's exactly it. To just go in, if we see now I just double checked here, and those speeds are from 2015. So we can gather more speed data this spring, and Sherborne, because of the changes that were made there, it may operate slower. But yeah, the way so what we don't like to do is go in if operating speeds are like this around 50, to just put up 40 km/h signs and expect people to drive slower based on that signage, right? And in the case of gateway signage, there would just be 2 signs basically as you enter off of Carling, or I mean, yeah, as you enter off Carling or you enter off of Byron.
It's just, if you
So-
say that we don't want to put in the, I mean, if we want to go over the operating speed, I mean, I think everyone here on this call is here because we agree that the operating speed on our streets is too high and we want to lower it. And we thought that a gateway community program would help achieve that. If it's not going to, then what are the other options that will help us to achieve lowering the speed limits? Because I think we all agree that the speeds are too high. 46 and 47 on that's Haymarket, I think, and 45 on Neepawa, or 56 on Sherburne. It's far too high and we all want to get them down. So what are our options for effectively doing that? I think that's kind of what we want to know. If it's not the gateway community, then what else are we talking about?
Yeah, and that's, aren't we, we're planning, I think that's part of the agenda today, is to talk about the options to lower the speed. So what we want to get through to everyone is that that putting speed limit signs up that are lower than what the operating speeds are is not an option on its own to lower speeds. What we want to do is add some form of calming measures, like traffic calming, in order to establish lower speeds. Check them again and see, okay, yeah, yes, it's lowered, so we can lower the speed limit. Because just to artificially lower it by putting up signs that that people don't necessarily comply with, because people tend to drive at the speed like with the environment, right? So if houses are back, like offset, if roadways are wide, there's not a lot of physical features that make you drive slow. You just, and I mean, I'm sure everyone here can relate. Like if you drive down, Meadowlands is always a good example. It's posted 40. But when you drive 40 down there, you feel like you're crawling, and there's always someone right on your butt, like kind of pressuring you to drive faster, right? So that's a typical example of something that was lowered artificially, and it doesn't really work. So we want to do it the proper way and have vehicles somehow physically made to slow down before we just go and post the speed limit.
So we'll talk about some of that, and of course, some of you are familiar with what we've done already. Okay, is this Asmat's turn?
Okay, all right, okay. So there are a couple of the TTC measures are available. One is shown in the in this the 2 photos. These are the flag stakes. So one alone is just on the left side, which is just the flag stakes, which is a physical character or the treatment which makes the travel lane narrow. And and on the other side, on the right side, there are it's a combination of delineators along with the flag stakes. So this kind of the treatment we normally deploy on the wider street, like 11 meter or something, so that it physically create the pinch point, so that when the motorists are driving around it, they will feel it is narrow and they slow down. Yeah. Another type of treatment is cyclozone delineators. Normally there are 2 different types of delineator, one with the blue and white. which is normally we deploy it on the bike, along the bike lanes, to demarcate the bike lanes and provide the extra safety for the bikers. Yeah, and there are different the bulb out with delineators options. We deployed them according to the situation. So on this picture, which is on the left side near the intersection, we put the bulb out with the delineator, so that demarcate the sides, the crosswalks, to provide the extra safety for the pedestrians. Yeah, and on the right side, on the right side, this delineator is with the bulb out. We just put it on a mid block segment of the street to provide the narrow down the street. And the same thing is on the bottom of the photo. Yeah, and these are different type of the pavement markings are available, like 40K speed pavement marking, stop ahead. The markings, normally we put it if there is an intersection with the low compliance. So this extra information provide to the motorists, so that they are aware of that there is a stop sign is there. And these are the thermoplastic symbols, same kind of same kind of pavement marking, but they are more durable, and it's last almost 5 years, but a little bit more expensive. And and it's I personally feel it's very eye-catching, and one is there on the street, motorists pay attention to it. Yeah, and this is the speed display board. I think most of the people have seen it. There are so many has been installed on citywide streets. Yeah, so it basically display the speed at which the motorists are traveling. It's another good achievement. And mostly we deploy the speed boards where on the RTL roads or major collector road, where the others the treatment cannot be deployed. Yeah, and these are the planter boxes. Is also provide the it narrow down the street, so that once the motorists are passing, they feel it that is the road is narrow, and they should slow down. Normally they slow down when passing through them. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah. Councillor, you are mute.
Sorry about that. We're getting lots of questions about speed bumps. And can you talk about what situations they're used for?
Do you want to take this one, Asmat?
The speed humps?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so yeah, so it depends on the street to street where we are deploying the speed humps. Normally, it's a very complicated process, and we have to see a lot of things, like mostly on the arterial roads or the major collector roads. We normally don't put it, and we avoid it. So we avoid it on the street which has the OC transport route, or there are in past there are some vibration issues or steep grades. So yeah, so there are some certain factors we have to consider it before, and it's a very complicated yeah, and it also is a very expensive cost wise.
Yeah, so and the two big ones are emergency services, like if it's a main route into a community, and transit. They're kind of showstoppers, I guess. Sherborne isn't a transit route, but it is an emergency service route. But I mean, there are some streets within the community that would qualify.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So so that's some of the things. So they do a warranty process, because frankly they're expensive, and so the other issue is snow clearing. They're not great for snow clearing, but it's it's possible. But if other ways can fix the issue of slowing people down, then we definitely want to try them. So I'll just go through some of the. They're not. It's helpful if you put it in the form of a question rather than comments, so I can read it out if you can please. I'm just going back. Okay, so yeah, most of these are comments, so I don't see too many questions. I'll just go back. Okay, is there speed data for Prince Charles? And which is has a curve in it.
I think all of the speed data we had is on that map. Yeah, I don't think we have anything for Prince Charles.
Okay.
I mean, we can order like more speed data this this spring. We will have to get more. I think we're going to order some for Seville for sure. The stuff we had there was something going on. I don't know if anybody saw that, the 27, 28 kilometers per hour. I think everybody knows people don't travel at that speed on Seville. So either there was some detour from something else and traffic was congested, or there was some construction when that was taken. But we pretty much have to disregard that data.
Okay. So what I'll do is we'll ask people to put up their hands so they can ask questions, because rather than putting comments in, if you want to ask a question, put your hand up, and then I will we'll open up the mic to you. Okay, is there any questions? No one's gonna, is anyone putting their hand up? Okay, Stephanie.
So I just finished typing them all, since you had asked us to type them earlier, but I'll just ask the questions that I typed. So what would you recommend are the the best and most effective measures to reduce speed on our streets? If it isn't a gateway community speed reduction type program, if it's not speed bumps, then what are the most effective things? And I will say that Sherburne is too fast. You've got a lot of kids that cross Sherburne that get to Nepean, or that go to Broadview, for example. A lot of people that go from Bromley down to Prados Depot. And I know down at the Knightsbridge end as well, that's always been something that's come up as being problematic. So that's, I guess I'll start there, and then I'll keep going based on the answers.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie.
Well, just to say, like, speed humps are probably the most effective. It's the problem is we can't use them everywhere. So we have.
I know, but I guess I don't want to hear what we can't do. I think we all want to hear what we can do. So that's why, what would you recommend are the things that we can do that would be most effective at reducing the speed of traffic in our neighborhood?
Yeah. So yeah, what Asmat listed as the options are what we have, and then we have to look at each street individually to see what might suit that street best. So probably the most effective thing that we have in our toolbox are the flex stakes with the delineators on each side, or the painted bulb outs with delineators to actually narrow the roadway with something like a physical measure other than just paint. Those are what we found to be most effective at this point in terms of temporary traffic calming. So that'd probably be the first thing we would look at, is where we can put that sort of measure. The speed boards, they work in some places, and they work for that particular location, but I mean, you can't put a speed board on every block. So a lot of times people slow down as they approach the speed board and then gradually speed up again. So they're not, nothing's 100% effective. but it also acts as a reminder to drivers, and sometimes they do carry on with that lower speed.
Okay, Bruce, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you for hosting this, Teresa, and putting this information session together. I guess through everything I've heard so far, there doesn't seem to be a lot of information or speed data on Prince Charles. And we've lived here for 30 years, and it's a feeder route right off of Carling Avenue. There's a lot of traffic that comes around the clubhouse turn at Iroquois and then gets up to speed right past our house. And there's been a number of, I guess, 4 or 5 instances where cars have gone off that turn into people's front yards. There's a lot of seniors that walk on Prince Charles. There's a lot of cyclists. There's a lot of children going to school. And recently my wife backed out of the laneway and somebody pulled up and went around her without even slowing down. So like, I guess there doesn't seem to be a lot of information about Prince Charles on this study. And I'm not sure that the signage is going to help our situation. I kind of like the idea of the speed bumps. A couple of those would certainly slow the traffic down. And I guess after 30 years and, some tax increases and whatnot, we could certainly, afford to put those down. A couple of those would definitely help slow the traffic down. And I also, I'm very aware of whatever we do on our street. Like, I don't want to do something or have the city do something on Prince Charles that then moves the problem off our street over onto our neighbors on Nippewa or elsewhere. So, but there, and it's only going to get worse with Canadian Tire expanding, with all of the infill that's going on with housing, and then the LRT. Somebody's going to get hurt or killed. So, thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, as has been stated, we don't have data for Prince Charles, so we can order that and find out what's happening.
Yeah, and just to clarify, like, this wasn't a study that was done. This is just data that we had in our database that we pulled that that was related to this area. So some of these date back to 2015, I think, is the oldest one. So it's already 6 years old. We can get more recent data for those areas that are a little outdated, and we can get more data for the streets that we don't have data on too, that people are concerned with.
If I'm too, like, this has been going on. This has been talked about in the neighborhood for as long as I've lived here. This is not something new that's just kind of arrived since 2015. It's been talked about since I moved on the street 30 years ago. But it's not just people passing through, making a shortcut from Carling Avenue over to Richmond Road. It's also people who live in the community and they're just pressed for time, or they got to get home to let their kids in or whatever. But even school buses, like, they'll make the turn and they'll just gear up and go tearing down the street. Pure later. There's at rush hour, it's quite risky pulling out of your laneway. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Chani?
Hi, it's Chani.
Chani, oh, sorry.
I'm wondering if you can just explain a little bit more. I'm having trouble understanding how, I mean, if people are generally going the speeds of 40 to 50, and so we would set a speed limit of 40 or 50, depending on the road. Like, I don't understand why, if we don't ask people to go slower, then they wouldn't go slower. Because the 30 was implemented on the other side of Sherbourne just, a few months ago. And as soon as anybody notices that, you slow down to 30. Why do we think that if we don't ask people nicely, say go 30, then people wouldn't go 30? Just because they're going 40 right now doesn't mean that they wouldn't slow down. So I'm confused about the logic there.
Thanks, Chani. I have actually asked about the possibility of going to 30, just so you know. Okay, I'll pass it on to Sean.
Yeah, it's not a matter of do we think, it's just there's been studies done in the past in other locations, right, where they haven't done anything to roadways. And it's not to say that it wouldn't be effective. Different locations it might work, but the studies that have been done looked at more like let's say you drop it from 50 to 40, then yeah, there have been studies that show that people have lowered their speeds. Probably not the full 10 kilometers per hour, but instead of driving, you know, maybe they dropped 5 or 6 or 7 kilometers per hour, right? But to drop from 50 to 30, that's a different thing. I mean, we haven't. This was pushed, you know, pushed through council too to lower the speeds east of Sherbourne, the speed limits. We don't have data yet that shows whether or not people are actually complying with that. I would bet that people are driving a little bit slower, but I would also bet that they're not driving between 30 and 35 kilometers per hour on average.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah,
But I guess, I mean,
yeah,
sorry, my question, I guess, is like, how can we tell people to slow down when the speed limit is 50? Like 50 is too fast. People drive up my road at 50. I drive up my road at 40 and I'm like, wow, I'm going really fast. Like just to see what it is actually like. Like, it's just, people shouldn't be allowed to drive 50 because it's too fast for the neighborhood. I live on a dead end street and people race up the road and I literally have to stand in the middle of the street and tell them you're going too fast. And they're like, but I'm going the speed limit. So we've been told that we need to report things, calling for enforcement. But if the speed limit is 50, there's nothing to enforce. They're not breaking any laws.
Which street are you on?
Bromley.
Yeah, okay.
So so all local streets are eventually going to be 40 kilometers per hour or 30 kilometers per hour. That's the whole, this gateway signage is just going to gradually spread through the whole city. It's just, we're doing it in bits and pieces because there is a cost to it, right? So so every year there's, you know, a minimum of one pocket being done with gateway speed limit signage per ward. And sometimes in some wards there's more than one. So this area is definitely being considered. And you know, it would be like we could decide, like there's no studies or anything need to be done to make the area 40 kilometers per hour. The only studies and work that would need to be done would be for Seville itself in these pockets.
Yeah.
So we could, you know, put in some measures and try and lower operating speeds, and then have the speed limit of Seville lowered to 40 as well, and then include that as part of the pocket and have it as one big pocket instead of two separate ones. So that's kind of what we had been considering and looking at.
We can make the whole thing 40 easily.
Yeah, and then that way, when people are driving 50 and it's reported that there's lots of drivers doing 50, and hopefully police are able to have some resources out there to try and address that, you know, and on certain streets, obviously they can't be on every street. But you know, it spreads, the word spreads. If someone gets a ticket in an area, they you know, they tell their neighbors, and hopefully people start driving slower because they're not sure if there might be a police officer there. So
yeah. So the question is from, well, there's lots of questions. So we can, how do we make the whole thing 40? We call it a gateway community, and we do the gateway signage for the whole thing to be 40. We can do that very quickly. In terms of but to change it to 30 is far more complicated. I think that's what we're trying to get across. And I know it's frustrating because you see the signs that just went up on the other side that are 30. So why can't Seville Road be 30 when Dovercourt is? Can you answer that, Sean?
yeah, well, the biggest thing off the top of my head is the roadway width is quite a bit different, and it's an important one. I'm just trying to pull it up here, but
It's a
Seville,
30.
I believe, is 13 meters wide. from curb to curb, which I don't know why it's so wide. That's a big part of the problem, why people tend to speed on Seville. I'm just double checking it here, but I'm pretty sure I checked it earlier and it was 13. Yeah, 13. And I think Dover Court, not that it's a narrow street, but it's, I think it's 10 meters wide. So it doesn't mean that, like, Dover Court, it doesn't operate at within that like 35 or I can't remember what the operating speeds were, but there was a promise made by council, I think, to implement certain TTC, like temporary traffic calming measures, over the course of the next little while to help lower the speeds.
Yeah.
That the rest of it, like, that's really the only street I think that was a concern in terms of roadway width, and roadway width too is probably the most expensive thing to deal with properly. You can throw in paint and that sort of thing, but it's not very effective, and I don't really support it in that way if you just use paint. But the other streets, you know, on average they're 7 to 8 meters wide already and heavily treed, lots of parking. There's just people tend to drive at lower speeds on them to start with.
I saw Michael and Michelle, but I think they left. So Stephanie?
Thank you. So if you say it's easy to get it, does that mean that we'll have it at the end of the month, if that's what we all want? The Gateway community?
I'll let Sean answer that in terms of how long it takes.
Well, the one thing we want, so first of all, no, it wouldn't happen because we don't install signs in the winter. For these signs, we need 4x4 posts to put them on, and unless there's existing infrastructure like a hydro pole or a street light pole. But the bigger part is we want to establish whether or not Seville can be included. So depending on
what has to be done then, I guess, in order to figure out if Seville has to be included or not? What has to be done? What are the steps involved in the process?
So if it operates, unless it operates, I mean, if it operates, if we do, like, we should collect more data because the data we have is old and the 28 kilometers per hour was not accurate. So the first step would be to collect more data, and we should do that once the snow is mostly gone to get the proper speeds, operating speeds. And then from there, we would decide, you know, so if it operates at somewhere 45, 46, we could probably justify going ahead and lowering it. But if it's higher than that, there's some other steps we'd have to go through. Actually, Hazmat, do you remember, does it have to go to council for a collector roadway, or do we just have to?
So if it's unposted 50 right now, Seville, and if it's the 85th percentile comes up like 50 or above, then it has to go. If we really have to lower the speed to 40, then it has to go to the council.
Yeah, so exactly. That's what. So we have to go to council, and council votes on whether or not it should be lowered.
And I've done that already for another neighborhood, and I'd do it again.
So
Yeah.
you're saying if the average data, or the average speed data that you get is above 50, it has to go to council in order to have it approved to be included in the 40 kilometer zone. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, they vote on now, and it's not the average speeds. We use the 85th percentile, just to clarify that it's the speed that 85% of drivers travel at or below.
Okay.
So
yeah,
the data has to be current as of the last year, or is there a rule surrounding that?
no, there's no particular rule, but I mean, we should have data within the last 3 years probably to be most accurate. So I think it would be best to collect fresh data this spring. So once that process goes through, if we decide we can include Seville, then that changes the number of signs we have to put in here, right? So it kind of hinges on that, and hopefully we could get Seville included, and then that way we do lower the speed limit, and we can work on putting in some traffic calming measures right away to actually try and get the speeds down to closer to that 40.
Sean, we're getting asked, how do you collect the data? Is it students sitting in a chair like they used to do, or?
No, that's for volume. Typically, when we did that, this is, they either put down the tubes, or there's these things called armadillos. It's they're little
Box.
basically that sits on the side of the road, and it automatically collects volumes and speed data as vehicles drive by.
Okay.
They're usually left out for a 48-hour period.
Okay.
And
Thank
we
you.
try and do it during the school year, and on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, preferably, just to get the most accurate volumes and speed data.
There's questions about sidewalks, but not specific to what street. But in terms of getting sidewalks, I can tell you that we've asked for a sidewalk on Sherborne, the opposite side, but it will not come for a little while. And that's how sidewalks work. They're very, very expensive and difficult to get because of that. It's actually not easy to get more sidewalks. Sidewalks, a lot of people don't want them in front of their house. Sometimes they require taking trees out and take a piece of your driveway. So in theory, we like sidewalks, but I'll tell you, it's not everyone does. And but it's also incredibly expensive. So unless they're doing work already in the neighborhood, or one is required, for example, in front of a school, even there, I'm only just getting some in that have never been in before in front of a school. So that's how it works for sidewalks. See if there's any other questions. Anybody else have their hand up? Michael Carr?
Yes, hi everybody. I also live on Prince Charles. I don't know if you can hear me, as well as my parents, and I've been lived here for, I guess I came back to the neighborhood 5-6 years ago, and things have gotten pretty crazy on this street. So just to address what Sean was saying about retrieving some data on this street, can we assume by this meeting that that will be happening potentially?
Yeah, I will ask them to put that in.
This for Prince Charles?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've noted that, so we'll order that. And again,
Okay.
they'll wait till the spring to collect.
Yep.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Robert and Sue Hayward.
Yeah. This is more, I guess, a comment or an observation. In December, when those signs went up on Sherborne about what was happening in that area, I guess that would be your gateway designation for that area. And I, for the life of me, have looked at those signs almost on a daily basis. And I can't see any difference between one side of Sherborne and the other side of Sherborne, other than the name change of the street. meaning Knightsbridge to Keenan, there's no difference. I don't believe it. I think that what you're talking about is a political move that was made to designate that area as a gateway, and we haven't had the opportunity to do it on the other side of Sherbourne.
Sorry, is there a question in there?
The question is, why did it stop at Sherbourne? Is it because of the political division between one councillor on one side and another councillor on the other side?
Yeah, it's one area is part of Kitchissippi, the other is part of Bay Ward. And
It's
those, I don't get consulted
the
on
same
what
community.
happens in another ward.
It's the same community. That's
Yeah.
my point. It's
Okay.
the same community. The cars that are going on this street go on that street. Like
Yep.
there's no difference.
But Robert, as I mentioned earlier, there is a difference in the overall street widths. They're
Come
quite a
on.
bit narrower.
That's a load. That's an absolute load.
Well, I'm measuring them as we speak, and they're average probably 2 meters narrower on the east of Sherbourne.
Guess
They're
what I
just
have to
different
do is
streets.
sit down with you and figure that out in terms of what street are you talking about? Because my eyes tell me they're very similar. This is the community. And what we have is a division based on Sherbourne.
Robert, I just want to add it. So that's why we are planning to collect the data in the springtime, so that we know that what's the operating speed. And once we get it, then we can go from there, and that what best can be done to match the other one is. But that's the whole point of right now we are working.
So we have a policy that we try and go by, and if there's pressure to override that policy, then it goes to council to vote on it. They don't look at it based on, well, we can't change this and not change this and then not change this, and the next thing you know, they're voting on having the whole city change. So they look at it as a neighborhood, which they've done, and council voted on having it approved to lower to 30, and it was approved. So it's done in pieces like that, not necessarily the best way to do it. I would say, just because, as we talked about earlier, just lowering the speed limit alone doesn't necessarily lower operating speeds, but they have committed to putting some funding into traffic calming here to try and actually lower operating speeds east of Sherbourne.
Hi, I think we might have lost the counselor. She's probably logging back on. So are there any other questions? I don't know where she was up to. Oh, my name is Connie, everybody. I'm just popping back in. What I wanted to point out is even though we put the gateway speed at 40, we have to actually put physical installations on the streets to actually make people go slower. And that's what we're talking about, the different options like bulb outs and all that. And that's why we're looking at the community as a whole, because some streets might have bulb outs on one side, another street both sides, another street might not be able to have it at all. They might need another form of physical sight line obstruction to actually slow people down. Let's see. Also, there's a request to collect data for Bromley. Maybe we can add that to our list, Sean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because there has been a lot of questions about Bromley and cars going back and forth on there.
And can you add Lauder to that as well?
Lauder?
because Lauder, yeah, it's another
Mhm.
one of those streets that people like to really pick up speed right around the Wembley intersection, I would say, as they're coming down before they curve up to join Bromley.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we have data for Bromley.
Okay, I just looking at the map that you were showing earlier with some of those red numbers on it, I don't think there was anything that showed up for Bromley or Lauder.
I think we only had. Okay, yeah, okay, sorry. I thought maybe I'm thinking of something different. We had a few concerns about Bromley, but a lot of them didn't make sense. Bromley doesn't exit onto.
It doesn't exit onto Carling at the opposite end, but people don't realize that. And there are all kinds of, and Shawnee's on the call, so she could probably tell you the number of times that she has people come down to her end of Bromley, realize they can't get out, and then turn around and boot it back down Bromley down towards my end. So we get it both ways. We have both reported these kinds of issues to like Google Maps and things like that, but they don't always get fixed. So GPS often will take people down there when they ought not to go.
Yeah,
It's got two no exit signs at McKellar.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's probably another one of those things where I don't know. It would be hard to fix because, like I said, it often pops up as a GPS issue where they think that they can get out at the end of Bromley, but they can't. So if we're not going to get that fixed easily, since who knows how you can contact every company that offers GPS data and fix it, we at least want to slow them down so that when they do go to the end of Bromley and go all the way back down again, they're not going at 55, 60 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, Bromley might be.
I wouldn't be
suitable for the
surprised
ball-
if there's.
Yeah, for the ball boats, they might be suitable for that.
Yeah.
Hi there. I'm sorry, my line dropped. So I was off for a minute or two there. Apologies.
Okay, I'll leave it back to you. I kind of jumped in there, Councillor.
Sorry.
Councillor Kavanagh, are you?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm still here.
Okay, so I was up to, we're almost finished. It's about 7:30, but I was up to about Sherburne suitable for traffic calming. And just a note though, there actually is traffic calming on Sherburne right now. It's they have the bicycle lanes. That is a form of traffic calming. So that's where we're up to. That's 7:25. So we just have a few more minutes. And I'll pass it on to you, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry about that. The computer line dropped. Anyway, I see hands still up, but I don't know if they were up earlier. Jason, you ask a lot. Do you want to talk? Or do you prefer to make comments? Okay. All right.
I
I see.
unmuted myself there.
Hello?
Yeah, I unmuted myself. I have the,
Okay.
I'm the Knightsbridge guy. I'm asking all the Knightsbridge questions. I
Yeah.
like everyone's kind of represented here. Like we got Bromley, Prince
Yep.
Charles, Knightsbridge.
Yep.
And I think we're all on the same page for the people that live here. And we're kind of repeating ourselves probably. Like Knightsbridge, I asked about, let's say the sticks. Like the sticks are a little bit too far apart. It's hard to describe, but they need to be a little bit narrower, because of what I found was people were slowing down at the beginning, but then they realized, hey, I got lots of space. Boom, back to normal speed. Because you can take them at normal speed, no problem. So I'm not sure if the sticks could be narrowed a little bit this summer just to experiment. Doesn't have to be much.
Okay, I'll ask Asmat because she was responsible for the implementation. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so as long as
Sure.
yeah, so it looks like that you are requesting for the more bulb out and delineators, so that there should be less gap between the one to the other.
Yeah. Is that
Oh,
possible?
not between them, but the actual width for the car. I'll give you an example. When I drove on Princeton, I hold my breath if, say, my teenager's driving. I'm like, oh my God, this is narrow. When I'm on Knightsbridge, hey, no problem. They're a little bit too wide.
Oh, I got it. So you mean the travel lane should be more narrower.
Just-
Yeah. So we have
just a little bit.
we have a limitation. We cannot put the bulb out more than 2 meter wide. Otherwise, if we put the delineators 2 meter from the edge or the curve, then people will be considering it's a travel lane. So that's why we have to make it less than 2 meter.
Oh,
That's the
okay.
reason.
Because yeah, our street is a
Yes.
bit wide.
Exactly. That's the reason is, yeah. So
How about, could you put some near closer to Lockhart, I wonder, because it's narrower there. Might help a
yeah.
little bit.
Yeah, we can consider it. Yeah.
And definitely in the school zone. There's nothing in the school zone. I noticed this. The
sorry.
section between Lockhart and Woodruff, I didn't see any sticks this summer. And
yeah,
what happens is, I'll tell you, I help out at the local rink there. I'm one of the flooders, and I'm there a lot. I watch people, they come off Woodruff and they barely stop at that stop sign at Lockhart. They just go right on down. It's like a highway.
You're talking about on Seville Road.
Nope, they go right down Knightsbridge off Woodruff.
Oh, okay. No, on
The stop
Knightsbridge,
sign,
okay.
there's a stop sign right at Lockhart and Knightsbridge.
Yeah.
They almost ignore that, and boom, they just keep going down Knightsbridge at the same 50, 60. Man, I wish I had a radar gun. I'm not sure about the guys in Prince Charles,
But yeah, we just had a meeting this morning with our local community officer.
Yeah.
He was telling us, keep reporting. If you want police to monitor an area because people are disobeying us, please give us data. Send it to the police. I know it's a pain, but just fill it out and say that at certain times there are people that are ignoring the stop signs and things like that. You get a better, they can't be everywhere all at once, but the more data they get on something that is happening, like an area where it's there's people disobeying, they'll monitor it. If they
that's why I asked earlier. I said, is there any enforcement data? I haven't seen any enforcement. Not that I want it on myself.
We could get. We actually had a whole workshop this morning on crime data.
I know, but with the pandemic, I'm home more, and because I work from home, so I'm seeing more, and I haven't seen. Maybe I've seen the guys take the breaks over at Lady Fatima, but I haven't seen anyone. I'm not sure if anyone in the neighborhood. I'll just mute myself because I've been talking too much, but I haven't seen any enforcement. And in the old days, definitely before the pandemic, there was more enforcement. I would see someone pulled over now and then.
It's based on reporting. The more they come out. They look at numbers. When they're analyzing and 10 people call in about a certain corner, they'll pay attention to that versus the one that nobody called in. So that helps. Thanks, Jason. We are wrapping up. Stephanie, did you still have your hand up or was that from earlier?
No, I did. And it's maybe a good wrap up comment or question for you. So as you know, Shani and I are both on the community association, and we would like to know, it's going to be an inconvenient reality that there's only so much budget to go around for all of these various traffic calming measures that we would like to have in place in our neighborhood. But is there something that can be done in order to help prioritize all of these different areas? We had done it, I think, once a couple of years ago, but I'm not sure it really went anywhere. If we got together as a community and tried to prioritize, Knightsbridge versus Prince Charles versus Sherburne or Bromley or all of the different pain points, is that something that could be helpful in order to move things along quickly? Because I think we're all, like, I appreciate the need for data. I think we're all very tired of hearing that we need something else that just to us appears like a roadblock or something that will delay getting measures put into place. So what can we do?
Okay, but there's a real data requirement, and that was Seville Row, because it splits Carlingwood in half. And if we can get information on that, that would be helpful. So that if we have information that says that it's in the the 40 range, then we can lump it all together and treat the whole area as one gateway. That would
You
be
know,
helpful.
absolutely, and I appreciate that. I guess I'm talking specifically about the other measures, the bump outs and the flex sticks and all of these other
Okay.
things that you would have a limited budget for.
Okay, well,
You know, we're going to have to prioritize them. So what's the best way to go about doing that?
that's a good question. We try and prioritize it on need. And we did it on Knightsbridge already. You heard from Jason, and we'll look at other areas that, you know, we see as being an issue. It is difficult to sort of pick your favorites in terms of what is the most problematic. But I work with Sean and ASMAT to help me with that, to determine, you know, in terms of what could work next. So we will do that. We're listening right now. That's why this meeting is on, to hear what the top concerns are. So this helps a lot. So we can come back and, you know, look at what we see as probably the priorities in terms of what we've heard and what makes, you know, what we can accomplish. Do you want to add anything, Sean, in terms of?
Maybe just that, like, some of, again, it's back to data, but we do look at, you know, like if we had the whole area and 3 streets were, you know, quite a bit higher operating speeds, then obviously we would prioritize those ahead of some of the others, I would think. And also, you know, the ones in close proximity to schools or walking routes to schools, maybe. That sort of thing, where there's lots of pedestrians, you might look at that. Different things like that, but again, mostly database, whether it's volume or collisions or speed data.
Okay, and thank you for putting in the information about the community association. Yes, keep in touch with each other. And Connie passed on the information about reporting traffic issues of people speeding or going through signs, etc. That link is right there. So there's different things that we can do, and we are interested in making the traffic slow down. We're trying to do it as efficiently as possible, but it's kind of an awkward spot because we've got a neighborhood that's kind of in 2 chunks. That was the issue we had, Seville Road being down the middle. And we're going to try and get that information as fast as possible on the Seville part, so we can see if we can treat it as one community. Would I like to make it 30K? Yes, I would. Would Sherborne be included? That would be awkward. I think that because it cuts through, but I don't see why we shouldn't make it 40. I'd like to see that 40. I may have to go to council to do all of that, but we have to do backup. As Sean says, if you put up the sign, there's anecdotal evidence that it supports it for a while, but it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. We do want people to slow down. That's what we had tried to achieve on Knightsbridge, and I think it's somewhat successful. And we can continue to do those things. And yes, things will change once the pandemic's over. Things will change once a store opens. All kinds of things can change. But overall, we want to have good data, and we don't want to wait too much longer. So we'll work on that for the spring. So that's why it's good to meet now. This is March, and hopefully we can get that done and meet back with the community. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much for spending the evening and passing on your thoughts. It's been very helpful. Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks very much.
Take care.